How to get the most from mountain biking. Do you need to spend lots of money on upgrades that save you weight and gain you watts? Or could a better bike fit provide all those gains? We're here at Ergon to find out how you can improve your ride experience by improving your bike fit. So why does bike fit matter so much? We're all individuals, and the few watts that we can put out on a bike radically change depending on how well suited we are to the position that we have on that bike. Comfort gets a bit of a dirty word in mountain biking, and it shouldn't, because if you go numb or you have saddle soreness or friction mid-ride, well, you'll know about it and it will put you off riding. Or it can cause a long-term injury, which is really not good. Now, you might be thinking, but I'm not a racer, I don't really care what these racers think. But actually, you should do, and you should care about a bike fit, because if you get a bike fit, you can be more efficient. Why should you care about efficiency? Because, well, it makes the riding experience of mountain biking easier, and whatever part of mountain biking you're doing, make it easier, it's just more fun. We're small and we're complex, and it is time-consuming to get the good bike fit, but essentially, of all the upgrades that we've got, it's probably got the best return on investment. And why should you really care about bike fit? Well, because you can make your bike ride experience more efficient. Why should you worry about efficiency? Well, you can make cycling easier when it's more efficient, and that's just a good thing. The other added benefit is that, well, you can reduce the risk of injury, which is great, whether you're, riding gnarly stuff or you're riding off the map. It's just a better experience when you fit your bike. We're going to start this relatively complex story with the most complex bit first. But don't worry, we're going to try and keep it simple. But when I say complex, I do mean complex. We're going to talk about the most complicated structure in the known universe. Yeah, that's a human, just there. And how it interacts and how all the bits go together make a big difference. So, yeah, Simon, can you run us through why a human body might be problematic, or some of its features in terms of bike fit? I guess from the feet up.
Actually, just to start it simple, biking itself is a sitting position or a sitting movement. But there ends the simplicity, because then there are so many things that are taken into account. Everybody has different segment lengths, different anatomics, different foot shapes, different tension in their body, and also different history in terms of crashes and so on. And so at the end, it's a very individual science.
We're talking about it's a sitting position, and I guess that helps, as you're saying, simplify the kind of complex story of a human into the fact that we've only got a few contact points. So you're able to run through the key contact points for us?
Of course, yeah. We have, we call them interfaces. We have the grips, we have the saddle, and we have the feet. And those three combine so-called like a triangle of ergonomics, and you have to put enough expertise and also development into the connection of all those 3 points to really create a good and a big picture.
I guess as a starting point, if we start with the saddle and talk about what loads there are and how we as humans interact with these kind of, I guess, relatively rigid bars.
It is, and there's a very important factor of what you derive from your target group. That means we are very much direct into upper body, angle, what bike do you ride? Is it a mountain bike? Is it a touring bike? Is it an enduro bike? And all these have different conditions that add a certain approach to your load is derived from the saddle.
Okay, yeah.
That means we speak about different shapes of the saddle in terms of the width. Everybody has a different sit bone width, so you have to apply to this problem. Everybody has a certain sensitivity in the pressure relief area. So there are different concepts going on. Also regarding the upper body angle in terms of the sensitivity of the pressure relief area. And then of the way you adjust the cushioning or the damping. Sometimes if you had higher loads on the sit bones, you have to use higher cushioning, higher damping materials. When we speak about road bike, you have more weight on the frontal, like of the arms of the upper body.
Yep.
You have less weight on the saddle. You can distribute the weight in a different way. You use a harsher foam. That's how all these things are taken into account by developing a saddle.
Okay, so we've got kind of one fixed point here, and we're supporting hips with, I guess, supporting torso. I guess the other point then is handlebars. And it feels like, again, yeah, this is another area. It's another contact point where I know, having ridden grips that weren't comfortable, it's something you notice straight away. But what are the kind of limitations in terms of grip and, well, grip?
Yeah, the problem that you have here, like having a tiny surface area and applying a lot of force to it, it even enlarges here because you have even more tiny surface area and more pressure, and only like the wrist or the palms that are used to really load your overall torso weight. And so you have to make small but very thought geometric changes to really have a homogeneous pressure distribution.
Feels like we've finished almost all of it, but then I'm thinking pedals. I guess this is another contact point. So is this another area where we have to kind of like manage how we fit and interact with a bike?
Definitely. It's the same like how you derive the pressure, how you apply the pressure, and what's the pressure distribution to look like. And there, the pedal that you use, if it's clipless or not, the surface area of the pedal, and also how, if you use clipless pedals, how the cleats are adjusted so that your overall leg axis is affected by the adjustment. And so you have to deal it in very carefully to have a homogeneous moving line, I would say.
Okay, yeah. So any impact that you're making to the foot is then moved up the chain of motion, so it can impact all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's time to actually have a bike fit. So where do we start?
Yeah, let's do it. So we start with the saddle. That means we start with saddle height, saddle setback, saddle angle. But before that, we have to check your sit bone width.
Okay.
To get you the right saddle to sit on.
Okay, we've got a device here. Is this going to tell me? Do I just sit on it?
Hopefully it does, yeah. It's our sit bone measurement tool. It's called TS1.
Okay.
Basically, it's a pressure-resistant sensor surface, and it measures the distance between your sit bones. Just take a seat, try to bend your lower back a bit.
Okay.
And that you feel the sit bones, like the sit bone pressure.
Yeah.
And then the system does the measurement by itself. We wait until the peep. There it is. Okay.
Yeah, I can get
perfect.
Up. Okay.
So it's 7.4, which is a very small sit bone width.
But that's really impressive. That's high accuracy.
It is, like, because we use like the digital sensor mapping, we get a good accuracy of measurement. But then we only offer 2 saddle widths because it doesn't have to be too complex in terms of the saddle width. There are many more influent factors. But for you, we go for the small size. Okay,
so we've used this really interesting tool to measure my sit bone width, and we've got that dialed. So we're on the smaller width saddle. And I guess it's a common question but how do I know my saddle height?
There are 2 very famous methods going on. The one is the Le Mans technique.
Okay.
It is a scientific methodology that is behind, so it is a rule of thumb, but you could apply it to your seat height, and it would give you a value that you can work with without getting any issues.
Okay.
But actually, it's not the perfect adjustment that you can get.
Okay.
The second one is the knee angle. There's a certain knee angle ratio that you have to meet with your knee when you are stretched. And it has to be between 25 and 35 degrees.
Okay.
And we will test it right now. Try to keep your heel as it is.
Yep.
Like to not reach fully downward. Yeah. Yeah, so this is like 28, which is good. Can you do the pedal?
Yeah,
again?
of course, yeah.
Because this is what I see all the time.
Would this be an example of people dropping their heel?
Yeah, it's dropping the heel. Because then there's a little more angle in the knee.
Okay, yeah.
Which I'd say is... Yeah. Now it's 35. So I could assume we can rise the seat post a tiny bit.
Okay. Right, so saddle is vaguely in the right place height-wise, but what are the other dimensions that we need to have?
The next thing that we check is the setback. There are also 2 options. You can calculate it roughly by having the inseam length.
Okay.
The more accurate version is to have the knee over spindle method. Put your knee like this, and I have a plumb line falling down, and we check how the force is applied to the pedal. So now you see it's not like the force acting point is a bit off your knee line.
Yeah.
It's more like a bit moved to the handlebar.
Yep.
And to correct this, we can shift the saddle a bit backwards
Okay.
to correct this anchor point of the knee.
And I guess, is there a risk of injury by having the knee loading in this way too kind of aggressively?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
This is a common point for knee issues because the pivot between the femur and the tibia is a bit off-centered, and so there's a certain lever on the tensions and ligaments. That's why there's this stress going on in the knee.
So we've readjusted the saddle position, so we've moved it a little bit further back.
Yeah.
And then we're going to recheck using the plumb bob to see where my knee over pedal spindle is. Okay, we're happy with the saddle fore and aft position. Now we've got to look at the angle of it. So yeah, how do we do that?
Yeah, sure. So we say that the saddle angle needs to be at 0 degrees to really just derive the load, but not give you a certain move forward of your center of pressure, because then the force and the pressure on the forearms is very much increased.
Okay, because as soon as we affect one part of this whole system, we're going to load another section.
Shifts over way to the front. So the saddle needs to be at 0 degrees. With the zack of the bike, we have to arrange it in a way that it stays to 0 when you sit on it. That means when you get off the bike, we will adjust it to -1 or 1.2 degrees.
Okay, because when I sit on the bike, it will actually balance it all out front to back. Okay, this looks like a really handy tool because I've noticed some saddles have got, different measurements or different shapes here, so it's hard to find that flat point. But with this, we can find, where the level is.
Yeah, that's the one picture, or one side of the picture. And the second is, what you see here, you have different numbers applied to it. It's the sitting point. And with this template, we make sure that we measure how leveled your saddle is at the right point.
Okay.
Because that is where your pressure is distributed.
Of course, because if we kind of move our weight back, then we're going to be sitting on a different part of the saddle, which then loads it differently depending on our sit bone width.
And maybe the saddle shape is different in this region. So we take the front mounting, and we have -1.1 degrees, which is what we want.
Okay, that's excellent, perfect. And that's because we're not doing it flat because we're on a suspension bike and the rear is going to compress, the front is going to compress at different rates. Effectively, the back is probably going to, I've got to do the maths, sag a little bit more, which means if we did a 0 position, we'd actually have a nose up, which I guess would then create, either if it's a flatter saddle, we might slide off the back and struggle to find a position. Or if it's a kind of like raised saddle, we're going to have issues around, I guess, soft tissue here.
Yeah, I think that's the most common issue will be the pressure in the relief area.
Okay, so we've set the saddle up, we've got the position right, we've got the height right. I guess it's now time to move to the cockpit and look at all the things that we can change there that will have an impact to how we fit onto the bike.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the first things that we take a closer look to are like your overall cockpit length, where we can have an influence with the stem length, and also the cockpit height, like how the pressure ratio is between you sit and how much pressure you apply on the bars and how much pressure you want to apply there.
Of course, yeah, because I guess depending on what style of riding you're doing, if you're kind of going up a lot or you're going down a lot, that's going to have a different balance. I guess where it's tricky is if you're kind of maybe enduro or a longer travel trail rider where you need that downhill performance and uphill performance. But I guess with the dropper post, that helps to a degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll hop on and I guess I'll see.
Definitely. But even in the enduro racing, you have those guys or all those ladies who want to apply a lot of pressure to the front wheel to keep traction.
Okay.
And when you lift the handlebar and you shift with this the CUP to the back, they immediately lose the pressure on the front wheel because they're like the overall position on the bike, even when you're standing, changes.
So you're moving because you're moving that center of gravity opposed to being...
to adopt for it, you have to ride it more aggressively. And if you do not do it, you lose the pressure on the front wheel.
Okay, so we've got, I guess, grips to look at in terms of what grips we're going to run in terms of where we're riding and what we're riding. And I know that Ergon has a huge range of different grips for different specific needs, which all makes sense, I think, because if you're racing downhill or enduro or a trail grip, it has a different properties versus let's go the opposite direction of like a Marathon XC, where you need to kind of like, support your hands and improve comfort as much as possible. Maybe have an additional hand position too.
You ride very static And I think that's the point. If you ride very static without giving new pressure peaks or pressure points, it gets very uncomfortable with the roundy shape.
Okay, of course, because you're just in one loading position.
Yeah.
And I guess to a degree, even on an enduro bike or a trail bike, if you're tackling steep terrain, whether it's up or down, actually you're going to be moving around quite a lot. Yeah, interesting. Okay, what other things in the cockpit setup should I be mindful, I guess?
When we start with the grips, on our Ergon grips, you find this up scale there.
Yep.
It's of course, it's our recommendation to mount it 90 degrees upwards.
Yep.
But you can also adjust it a bit to your personal needs. In this case, since it's the GTH, we have this damping texture cushioning going on.
Yep.
And with this upscale, you can transform how much damping or the direction of damping that is going into your forearm.
Okay, yeah.
Like when you maybe get up and get into the trail position, that's how the force is coming through the handlebar. And now you feel the texture is moving in a very straight way. Or when you feel that it's too aggressive in the palm region, you can rotate the grip a bit frontward or backward to dial it in to your needs.
Okay, and that's because of the sort of like the off-axis shape of this grip in terms of you're able to rotate that.
With the wing grip, you have to, with the upscale, you can make sure that your wrist is in a good position so that it doesn't do like a very flexed or a banded shape, so that it has to be straight. The wing adjustment, you can dial it in a way that it fits.
And I guess same for if you've got, bar ends.
Bar ends as well, yes.
Make sure that they're not upright.
You see what happens to your forearm.
Because immediately my body's changing here, so then my back is going to change, I guess. So if we're rolling them round, then it means I can change position. And in terms of like bar width, I think these are 760, which for me is a really wide handlebar, because I don't feel like I'm that wide. But is there a kind of a rough guide of width that people can work to, or is it?
Unfortunately, there's not a formula to it. You have to rely on experience. Okay. But what you can say is that the narrower it gets, the more upright your overall position is. Okay. But you lose the calmness of the bike because all your steering influence is transformed in the actual steering of your front wheel. And with the longer handlebar, it gets soft or smoothed out a bit.
Okay, yeah.
But what you can say is that with a shoulder width of 40 maybe, or 38, you do not use 82 or 80 handlebar, because then you're very spreaded. You have a lot of effort going on in your breast muscles to hold the weight, because the lever is way too wide. Okay,
so I guess then we've got to look at lever position, which from personal experience as a mechanic seems very personal. But I noticed, a lot of downhill racers influencing enduro and then trail riders. And I guess for me, I've noticed that my lever position has gotten higher and higher. Whereas I remember when I first started, it was all about a seated position and you would have your lever kind of almost in line. But I think, is it wrong that we've kind of like morphed into this downhill position? Thanks to the dropper, we're now able to change our overall position.
It's a scientific approach to leave everything in line, because then you do not have any influence on your nerves. Everything that bends your wrist there's a certain room claim, and then the nerves get affected. So if you try to keep it straight, no problems with the nerves. Okay. But the problem with your brake finger is when you go, you ride in the trail position, like standing, and it gets very steep, and you have the lever shifted maybe to 45 degrees. It feels like you have to go over the bars to reach the trigger of the brake. That's why the more steep stuff you ride, the flatter your brake lever gets, because it adapts to the position where your braking is actually happening. Okay. And that's the point. And you cannot really simulate it here on the fitting. But that's how you have to dial it in by exchanging experience and speak about those stuff.
Okay, we've done saddle, we've done cockpit, now we've looked at cleats, and the way that my cleats were set up wasn't perfect, and we've got to do some changes to them. So what changes are we going to do? We're going to move them around to create a more natural pedal stroke, is that right?
That's right, yeah. We have to align your leg axis during pedaling. And what came up during the bike fit is that your right side is a bit rotated to the inside in terms of your heel. And with the TP1 cleat tool, you just have to put in the cleat, and then you have like a scale and you can see it here. And with a very high precision, you can adjust those cleats similar or to the issues that you see on the bike fitting, and then you can compensate with the cleat tools.
Okay, perfect. So opposed to having to juggle them upside down and fiddle and then look as if they're the same, you can just actually look at them on a grid.
Yeah.
And I guess to sort of explain why cleat setup is really important is also to explain that if I'm moving my foot, does that changes this range of motion here, does it?
It changed the range of motion, but it also changes how your tibia and the femur are aligned to each other.
Okay.
They called varus and valgus, like how they are aligned. And if they are not centered, you have pressure peaks on the inside or the outside of the knee. And this you can, like if you put your foot to the inside, like this or like that, just moving the foot, you see how your knee and your leg axis is influenced. And this is what you can also adjust with the cleats, like how stable the forefoot is regarding to your pedal axle. Okay,
we've talked about cleat position in terms of how it changes the heel, but also where we're putting the cleat. Now, for a long time, there was kind of a roadie tradition of this ruling of running it between your smallest toe and your biggest toe, or kind of around or off the ball of your foot. But I know for me and quite a lot of other mountain bikers, that felt too far forward and I was on my tiptoes. So is it okay from a bike fit side to run our cleats slightly more rearward?
If you regard it as the most efficient biomechanical point, yes, mount it forward, because then you use all your muscular chains in the most efficient way.
Okay.
But for mountain biking and trail performance in a downhill, leave it in the back so you have more control in your foot.
Wow, there's a lot to learn about bike fit. So big thanks to all the people at Ergon who helped us navigate that bike fit conundrum. And, well, I think my conclusions are that we're small and we're quite complex, but it's worth investing the time and effort to perfect our on-bike fit. Why? Well, we can boost our efficiency and we can maximise our output. And that means that, well, we can probably ward off injuries and we can make riding easier and more fun, and that's worth investment. So get nerdy and give a shit about bike fit. So we've shared lots of tips, but what was your favourite from this video? Let us know in the comments below.